Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School every night here on YouTube, Monday to Friday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. We have conversation, we have analysis, we have breakdowns of some of the most important topics going on in the world. It is not a podcast. It is not a TV show. It is a global classroom. I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. We got a lot to talk about in a short amount of time, so I'm going to get right to it. But for those that are wondering, yes, I am wearing my Philadelphia 76ers t-shirt. People thought that we were dead last night. People thought that it was over. People thought that we were getting eliminated in Madison Square Garden, but we did not. We persevered. Shout out to Tyrese Maxey for hitting them game-winning shots, series-saving shots, team-defining shots, city-affirming shots. Philly, we still in this thing, and we not going to quit because that's not what Philadelphia does. Let's talk about what's going on in the world. The first thing that I want to get back to is something that we talked about last night, which are the student protests all around the country. Students continue to protest the genocidal war in Gaza by taking on campus administration, by setting up tents, by having encampment sites, by having work stoppages. They are resisting in every way imaginable on campuses. And that resistance has been met by the state as well as the institutions with more resistance, with counter resistance. The students stand up and fight. The universities are not fighting the injustice, they're fighting the students. The city and state, they're not fighting for a boycott or divestment or sanction campaign. No, they're fighting to kick the kids out of school. And one place where we've seen a really egregious example of the failure of a college administration and a police department to properly protect students is Los Angeles. Let's look at University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. On Tuesday night, last night, a pro-Israel mob attacked pro-Palestinian encampments. And you know what the police did? Nothing. They let it happen. You can see a video coverage of this, a video footage of this. You see the encampment, you see the students protest. It looks very similar to many of the other encampments. And then you see people come in, mobs come in. Let's be honest. We see a mob come in, and you see a Zionist come in and drag a man out and beat him as he stands in front of the encampment. This is brutal. Look at this. You're literally watching a mob scene here where a pro-Palestinian student is getting beaten and dragged. There's also footage that catches fireworks being thrown into the encampment. Do you know what it's like when you're in a crowd of people and it's dark and it's packed and someone drops a firework, some kind of explosive? It sounds like a bomb. It sounds like a gunshot. It sounds like you might die. So what they're trying to do, in addition to physically beating people inside of the encampments, rushing into the encampment, look at this. This is mob behavior. This is awful. This is violent. This is terrifying. But here's the thing. The police were there. The police could have done something about it. The police could have seen it and then responded and said they saw it and did nothing. Now, this is in and of itself problematic, right? This is in and of itself problematic. Somebody wrote in refugee and said that's what happens in the occupied West Bank. That's exactly right. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the West Bank or been in Jerusalem and watched settlers do that very thing, where they go into Palestinian villages, or they stand on the gate of a Palestinian village, especially in East Jerusalem, and they antagonize and they bait and they goad the Palestinians. But in this case, they did more than that. These people, and I don't know if they're students or if they're outside agitators, but they came into the encampment. Do you see these fireworks? Do you see these fireworks? Again, imagine being in a place where you're already getting bomb threats. You're already getting warnings that they're going to kill you. You're already worried about gunfire popping off. And then you hear pop, 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 crack, 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 lights, smoke. You don't know what's going to happen. So they're not just antagonizing here, they're literally ripping through into the encampment. This is terrorism. This is the very thing they accuse Palestinians of. This is terrorism. But I'm going to point out one more time, the police are doing nothing. Now imagine, you don't have to imagine. Look at all the times the police have rushed in and arrested pro-Palestinian protesters. Look at what they did at Columbia University last night in front of the newly named Hind Hall, where they took over the building, old school style, Howard University style, A building style. You already know. At Columbia, and those kids took over. The police were there. Eric Adams had the police on those students like white on rice, dragging them out, installing cranes to drag the kids out of the building, installing mechanisms to get the kids out. Kids knocked out, unconscious, and they're dragging them out of the building at Columbia because they're pro-Palestinian. But somehow these kids can, pro-Zionist, or these Zionist students can crash an encampment, beat people up, drag them out, throw fireworks in, and the police just watch. The police do nothing. Now look, I'm not pro-police. But if you say the police are what we need for law and order, why the hell is this happening? So again, when we talk about the relationship between critiques of law enforcement and critiques of Israel, they're not separate things. That's what Black Lives Matter was trying to tell y'all back in 2014 when we were marching and protesting, when we were in Ferguson against the violent police state, and then suddenly people are screaming, free, free Palestine. That's the point, is that violent states, settler colonial states, protect the powerful and make the vulnerable disposable. And who is better prepared to make the vulnerable disposable than a police force? And the fact that you're in LA, that just makes it easier, because the LAPD been protecting the powerful forever, and they've been beating up on the vulnerable since there's been a LAPD. That ain't just now. We grew up on that. We grew up on that in the 90s. Back when LA police would have the most police brutality complaints. And the clearance rate for police, in other words, the amount of police who were exonerated, was in the 90s, like 98, 99% some years. So the police are used to watching this happen. But this is shameful. This is embarrassing. If you believe in arresting Palestinian students and pro-Palestinian students, then how the hell are you not arresting pro-Israeli and pro-Zionist students who are literally forming mobs and beating up kids? Come on, y'all. This is indefensible behavior. Absolutely indefensible behavior. Anyway, speaking of indefensible behavior, let's move on to another story. Eric Adams. You know, Eric Adams is... I'm not convinced that he is more despicable than other major city mayors. But maybe it's because the spotlight is on him because he's in New York, or maybe because he draws so much attention to himself. But Eric Adams really just gets in my craw. And not just mine. If y'all want a great analysis of Mayor Eric Adams, go to Olayemi Olorin's page. Go find her breakdown of Eric Adams on YouTube, or watch her Breakfast Club interview. My sister Olayemi Olorin, who's a friend at night school, you will absolutely see the breakdown everywhere. But beyond that, Eric Adams seems to find new ways to contradict himself, new ways to undermine democracy, new ways to brutalize civilians, new ways to sell out Black people. Eric Adams is phenomenal when it comes to snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. He finds new ways to screw stuff up all the time. So we already know Eric Adams and the police chief of New York City combined power with the administration at Columbia University to militarize the Columbia University campus, to raid the campus, to lock students up, to brutalize students. And they did the same thing at City College. It ain't just the Ivy League. We tend to care more when it's the Ivy League because we say, look at those wealthy or middle-class white students, those upper middle-class students, those privileged kids How dare this happen here at City College and in the CUNY system where I teach? These are working class students. These are Black and brown students, but they're getting brutalized. Their encampments are being destroyed. They're being wrongly treated by law enforcement. This is a crisis across the board. And Eric Adams continues to make matters worse. If the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. All Eric Adams sees, as a former police officer himself, is nails. And law enforcement is his hammer. It's a poverty problem, lock them up. It's a drug problem, lock them up. It's a protest against Gaza and the genocide in Gaza, lock them up. Who do you lock up? The protesters. I mean, it is a bizarre logic that governs him. But the other thing about Eric Adams is not just that he has bad economic policy and he weaponizes the police, because all these big city mayors do lots of the similar stuff. There's something unique about Eric Adams and how he moves. Part of it is that he says anything. Eric Adams literally he will just say anything. Whatever's working in that moment, he will say it, yo. It's actually, again, it's phenomenal how absurd a human being he is. He's a ridiculous person in so many ways. So we know yesterday, Tuesday, April 30th, almost 300 people were arrested at City College and at Columbia University. And police at CUNY, again, City College is part of the City University of New York system, CUNY, took down the Palestinian flag that was hung up by the students, right? Again, the students hung up a Palestinian flag. The police took down the flag and raised the American flag. Eric Adams, of course, being Eric Adams, gives a press conference as he's explaining why he's beating up students, why they're locking up undergrads, why they're criminalizing dissent, why they're abandoning the First Amendment. He's trying to justify all that. And Eric Adams stands up and says, it is despicable that schools would allow another country's flag to fly in our country. Then he went on to say that this is part of global issues that forces are trying to radicalize our youth around the world. All forces around the world are trying to radicalize our youth. Let me show you something about Eric Adams. This is what makes this guy so funny. He says, how dare you fly another country's flag? Look at him. What's that there? What's that in his hand? Not near him, in his hand. Is that the Star of David? Is that blue and white? Is that the Israeli flag? Yes, it is, Eric Adams. And that ain't the only one. See, that's what makes this guy so freaking fascinating. There is footage of Eric Adams flying the Israeli flag, holding up the Ukrainian flag. Eric Adams ain't seen a flag that he don't love. How many times is Eric Adams also going around saying New York is the Tel Aviv of the world? We're the Rome of the world. We're the Lima, Peru of the world. We are the Mayaguez of the world. He loves to embrace other nations and he loves to fly other flags. Now, you may say, Mark, that's a minor point. This is a pedantic point. This is an unimportant point. He's making a larger argument. Oh, I hear you. He's making a larger argument. It's just a dumb one. The truth of the matter is, Eric Adams is not outraged that another flag was flying. Again, we don't have to worship the flag. We don't have to worship the American flag or any other flag. We're allowed to fly other flags. And I guarantee you, Eric Adams is not running into a Zionist encampment, ripping down Israel's flags and saying, how dare you, and pulling the Israeli flag down and putting up an American flag in his place. I guarantee you he's not doing that. I guarantee you he's not doing that. But he's doing it with Palestine. And he's being fed talking points. He's being fed. Eric Adams don't know nothing about this issue and doesn't probably care about this issue. But what he does care about is voter support, donor support, and political support from higher ups around the country. Eric Adams wants to be more than just New York's mayor. Maybe he wants to be New York's governor next. And sadly, it ain't impossible. You know why? Because he knows that all he has to do is say the right thing and he'll be just fine. So this idea also that people are radicalizing our youth. Radicalizing our youth. You know what? First of all, our youth are being radicalized. And I'm glad our youth are being radicalized. He means it different, but it's actually true. He's saying it in a bad way. Like there's these forces around the globe that are corrupt. Oh my God, Muslims and Arabs and brown people in general are just corrupting our kids, making them do crazy stuff. No. People have eyeballs and they have ears. And they're seeing and hearing genocide. They're watching tens of thousands of people killed in Gaza every single day. They're on social media and they're witnessing buildings being blown up, schools being destroyed, hospitals being bombed. 34,568 Palestinians have been killed officially. There's another 8,000 or so under the rubble. 77,765 Palestinians have been wounded since October 7th. This is all just Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip since October 7th. So yeah, people are seeing things. And when you see awful things, when you see genocide, when you see apartheid, when you see occupation, yes, it makes you radicalize. But what does radicalize mean? It doesn't mean what the Fox News has made it to mean, which is you've joined some terrorism cell by Al Qaeda or the Taliban. No, radical just means to get at the root. Those of us who are radicals want to disrupt the status quo by getting at the root cause of our problem. Why are people poor? Why are people hungry? Why are people unhoused? Why are people marching for Palestine? And these young people are learning and they're asking new questions and people don't like it. And when they don't like it, when the powerful don't like something, they use the state and its resources to squelch dissent. And that's what you're seeing right now all around the country. Joe Biden is the powerful. Congress is the powerful. And they don't want this happening. And the fact that Democrats are the face of the repression is not going to do the Democrats any favors in November of 2024. Joe Biden is the face of the repression. He's the face of complicity for genocide. Eric Adams is the face of repression. You got these Democratic executives, a Democrat executive in New York, a Democratic executive in Washington. They're the ones leading the repression against Palestinians. So those same young people who are getting their butts kicked on campus, those same young people who are getting locked up, those same young people whose resistance is being criminalized, you think they're going to vote for you in November, Eric Adams, whenever you run again? You think they're going to vote for you, Joe Biden, this November? Of course not. So not only are you doubling down on repression and being unethical, you are also undermining your own success as a political candidate. It's just something for y'all to think about. All right. There's another topic I want to talk to y'all about. I'm trying to make sure that I leave room for office hours tonight because I got some answers for whatever questions y'all got. I'm feeling energetic this evening. Let's talk about the House vote today. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill to expand the definition of anti-Semitism. It was a successful bill, despite the fact that there have been considerable opposing arguments that this bill infringes upon free speech. The vote went 320 to 91. It's a pretty significant vote. 320 to 91. That means it wasn't just a partisan thing. Yet Democrats and Republicans supporting this bill. And I suspect almost only Democrats opposing it, but we'll unpack that. But anyway, the House voted in favor of this new definition of anti-Semitism. the definition provided by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Whew, this is problematic. If the bill becomes a law, campuses that would be now deemed anti-Semitic by this definition would not receive any money, any funding, any other resources from the Department of Education. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, argues that there are already laws prohibiting anti-Semitic discrimination and that this new definition does more and actually goes too far. Now, some of you are saying anti-Semitism is real. I agree. Anti-Semitism is growing. I agree. We must do something against anti-Semitism. I agree. So what's wrong with expanding the definition of anti-Semitism? Well, the problem with expanding the definition of anti-Semitism isn't just expanding a definition per se. It's not that. There's always new ways to think about anti-Semitism. There's new ways to think about uprooting anti-Semitism. And in a changing world, there might be new ways to be anti-Semitic that didn't fit in the old definition. We have to expand it in order to make sure that we don't have anti-Semitism. I get it. But that's not what's happening. What they're doing is adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition. Now, this definition is compelling to people. And on its face, it seems reasonable. Like, yeah, the Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, if anybody should know how to define anti-Semitism and fight it, it should be them. I feel you. Except the IHRA definition, first of all, was not intended to be an overarching framework for law. That wasn't, the person who created it didn't create it for that reason. But things change meaning. Things change in meaning. Things change in purpose. So that's not in and of itself disqualifying. But let's actually look at what the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is, because that's what your congressman, y'all voted for these people. This is what they actually say anti-Semitism is. Let me pull that. Can we make that a little bigger? I'm old with little eyes. It says, contemporary examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, the workplace, the religious sphere, could, taking into account the overall context, include but not be limited to. So this is the IHRA definition taken from the State Department's website, sort of breaking down what anti-Semitism is. Here's one of them: calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. Okay. I'm not going to argue that one. I don't love the radical ideology or extremist view of religion. It seems to me you could just have it as calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews, period. Because I don't care why you're calling for it. Anybody who calls for or helps to or justifies the killing of Jews because they're Jews, to me, that's anti-Semitism. I don't care what the ideology is. But if you want to say in the name of an extremist view of religion or a radical ideology, fine. I'm not arguing that at all. The second one, making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews, such as the power of Jews is collective, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as collective, such as, especially but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. I'm good with that, right? I have no issue with that definition of anti-Semitism. Again, if people are making stereotypical allegations, dehumanizing allegations about Jews, that, as the definition says here, as such, that's anti-Semitism. All these narratives of global conspiracies, cabals of power, Jews control the world, these protocols of the elders of Zion, all these kinds of narratives, all anti-Semitism, all unacceptable. Here's where it gets more complicated as we could go down a little bit more. The third one, denying the fact, scope, mechanisms such as gas chambers, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of the at the hands of nationalist socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II. So basically, Holocaust denial, right? Anti-Semitism. I'm with you. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. I consider that anti-Semitism as well, 100%. No dispute from me at all. I think some people might raise a philosophical question about that. For example, if people are saying X number of people were killed and someone else says, no, it's actually Y, it's actually a little bit lower. Some people would say that's, I should have the right to do that without it being anti-Semitic as such. I understand that argument, but the problem is you're not framing it as an individual simply having a number wrong. You're saying that it's Jewish people as a group or Israel as a state inventing. First of all, if you say anybody invented the Holocaust, that's anti-Semitism, full stop. But even saying that Jews as a group exaggerate the Holocaust, that is absolutely anti-Semitic. I mean, I wouldn't debate that argument at all. There's some people who I think in good faith would dispute that, but I happen to agree that it's anti-Semitic. The next one, accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. Again, this idea of dual loyalty is a long-standing trope about Jewish people, and saying that some people are more concerned with Israel than their own country. Now, I think that becomes challenging for some people when they see people endorsing policies that are more beneficial to Israel than to the United States. But again, the undergirding here is that there's a sort of belief that there's a duplicitousness among Jewish people. That there's something shady or sneaky going on that reinforces other stereotypes about Jewish people. Again, I'm not sure that should be in a textbook definition of anti-Semitism, but I absolutely have seen and believe that the accusation of dual loyalty is weaponized as an anti-Semitic narrative or claim. I'm not sure it's anti-Semitic as such, but it's not for me to decide. I wouldn't argue with anybody about whether that's anti-Semitism or not. I just wouldn't. Here's the next one, though. Here's where it gets funky, and this is what I want y'all to pay attention to. Denying Jewish people their right to self-determination. Now, some of the other definitions are about doing something to people because they're Jewish, to Jewish people because they're Jewish. Denying a Jewish person a job is not in and of itself anti-Semitic. Denying a Jewish person a job because they're Jewish is anti-Semitic. In the same way that denying me a job because it is not problematic, but denying me a job because I'm Black is racist, right? I mean, that's just common sense. But here they're saying denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, denying the Jewish people, right? So this is a Jewish nationalist argument, right? Saying that that the Jewish people are a singular people, they are a nation, right? It's a nationalist argument. The Jewish nation or the Jewish people have a right to self-determination. Now, the problem with this is that many colonial enterprises are framed, and settler colonial enterprises are framed as the right to self-determination. When America was founded and Native Americans were killed and dispossessed of their land, many people argue that it was part of manifest destiny, right? That it was the divinely ordained right of white Americans to settle in all of North America, right? That it was there, and then as white men, they had a right to decide their own destiny, self-determination. The problem with self-determination is that we don't live in an empty world. My right to self-determination can't impinge on or infringe on your right to self-determination. So this definition doesn't take into account competing uh, agendas politically, competing political projects, competing self-determination projects, right? So if I, for example, if I say that Jewish people, or not, let me not say Jewish people, because it's not really about Jewish people, which is another sleight of hand that happens here, right? This is about Israel, right? But if you notice, they start with denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination. And then the example, the e.g. they give is saying by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. So Jewish people is now equated with formation of a state of Israel, right? Which is a Jewish state and a specific Jewish state, right? And so now Judaism is being conflated with Zionism, right? The project of creating a Jewish state in historic Palestine is political Zionism. So they're conflating Jewishness and and Jewish self-determination with the formation of the Jewish ethno-state. These two things are not the same. But again, people have a right to believe that creating Israel is okay, but I have a right, and you have a right to say, I don't believe that the formation of Israel was morally okay, politically acceptable. I can disagree with the formation of Israel, right? And I can say that creating Israel came at the expense of the Palestinian people, that the creation of a Jewish state as such affords different rights and privileges based on whether or not you're Jewish or not. And I can say that that's an ethno state. And I don't believe in ethno states. I don't believe in Kurdish ethno states. I don't believe in Arab ethno states. I don't believe in uh, Islamic ethno states. I don't believe in Jewish ethno states. I don't believe in white ethno states. I can say that unless we follow this definition, because this definition says that denying the Jewish people the right to self-determination is anti-Semitic. I don't disagree that denying Jewish people the right to self-determination because they're Jewish would be anti-Semitic, but they don't say because they're Jewish. They're just saying denying Jewish people the right to self-determination. The problem again is, I'm going to say it again, self-determination is a messy and complicated term. If I right now say that I believe as a Black Philadelphian that I have the right to also take over Delaware and New Jersey, right? And I believe that it's my God-given right, or I believe that it's my political right. And I say that as a Black Philadelphian, I want self-determination. Or I don't have to take an abstract hypothetical. You could look at the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam in the 1940s and 50s, they're founded in 1930, but in the 1940s and 50s, we're talking about expansion, and their vision of a nationalist project was to take over several states inside of the United States. Did they have a right to do that? They had a right to envision it. They had a right to struggle for it. They had the right to advocate for it. And other people had a right to say, no, that's not what we want, or no, that's not fair, or no, that's not okay. The Back to Africa movement, when people were going from the United States to Liberia, I'm thinking specifically of the Amerigo-Liberians. If people say, well, look, that's a colonial project for you Amerigo-Liberians to come to Liberia, and they say, well, it's our self-determination, we should be able to have those conversations. I'm not making a case for whether, at this moment, for who's wrong and who's right. I'm saying we should be able to have the conversation. But the IHRA definition says that it is anti-Semitic for me to even question the moral legitimacy of creating a state on the backs of others. If I say that the creation of the state of Israel was a racist endeavor, I'm an anti-Semite by this definition. If you say that the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which allowed for and formalized and normalized the creation of a Jewish homeland, not a Jewish state, but a Jewish homeland. If I say, yeah, but when you read that document, it barely mentions Palestinians. It doesn't mention them by name. It says it can't undermine the kind of religious and civil rights of the pre-existing population. They're talking about the Palestinians, right? But if I say, look, man, that's the Balfour Declaration. The British really screwed over the Arabs in the formation of the Jewish state. That would be anti-Semitic. If I say that the Arabs are screwed over because they were not Jewish, right? Because they were Arabs, it becomes anti-Semitic. Anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I just want you to understand that me having a criticism of the Jewish state or of Israel, more specifically, becomes anti-Semitic. If I right now were to say I don't believe in the formation of a Shiite kind of government, I don't think the government should be organized around religious identity, which is what I do believe. You know, I have an issue with an Islamic state. If I say, look, having an Islamic state is wrong. A government cannot be governed by a Sharia law, and they cannot afford different rights and privileges, or even frame the kind of cultural or legal, rather, infrastructure around Muslimness. If I say that, people say, you know, you might even give me some applause. You might say, yeah, that's cool. But if I say the exact same thing about Israel that I say about Iran and Saudi Arabia, it's anti-Semitic. All right, let's move to the next one. Applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. I agree. I don't think that Israel should be held to a higher standard. But Israel also shouldn't be held to a lower standard. And too often, the way this particular rule is weaponized is when we hold it becomes a space where unless you hold every nation in the world accountable for something, you can't hold Israel accountable for it. So, for example, if we were to say, hey, we need to take Israel to the International Criminal Court, or actually, let me give you a better example. If you say we need to have a boycott, divestment, and sanction movement of Israel because of its treatment of the Palestinian people, they can say, well, you haven't boycotted Uganda. You haven't boycotted China. You haven't boycotted Russia. You haven't boycotted Uganda. You haven't boycotted Sudan. And so it becomes a way to engage in whataboutism, because any pressure, any criticism, any accountability you apply to Israel, unless you've done it to everybody in the world, you can't do it to Israel. That becomes the practical consequence of this. You might say, well, that's fair. Why should Israel get something that other people don't? And the answer is not because Israel deserves to be treated worse than other countries, but because every country doesn't have the same position in the global hierarchy. For example, Israel is a powerful nation, like the UK is a powerful nation, like France is a powerful nation, like Germany is a powerful nation, like the United States is a powerful nation. And so there's a way that I can hold Israel accountable in the international kind of political landscape that I can't hold, say, Eritrea or Djibouti. Not because those countries shouldn't be held to the same standard as Israel, but it's harder to enforce. Sometimes it's about the unique relationship. The United States gives Israel billions of dollars every year. So yes, the United States can apply pressure to Israel in ways that it can't apply to China. The U.S. doesn't control China. The U.S. can't dramatically impact China's political outcomes in a way that it could Israel. Because if we don't give Israel political cover at the UN Security Council, if we don't give Israel money, if we don't give Israel defense systems, if we don't give Israel offensive weapons, Israel doesn't have the capacity to do certain things. Russia still can, and Russia doesn't need us. China doesn't need us. North Korea doesn't need us. What's my point? My point is that if we call for the United States to apply diplomatic pressure to Israel and don't ask them to do that to Russia or to North Korea, it's not because it's a double standard. It's because Israel will listen. Those other people won't. So that's why you don't see a BDS movement coming from certain places and you see it from others. It's not always about isolating Israel. It's about the political realities. Using symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism. Absolutely, I agree 1,000%. What's the next one? Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. That, for me, And I don't draw Nazi comparisons. I just don't like to do it. I don't like to say that this country is like Nazi Germany or these people are like the Third Reich or that person is like Hitler. I don't think they serve us well. I think they're divisive. I think they're distracting. I think they're often untrue or unfair. Hitler was a unique kind of evil that I don't think many people match up to. There's some, Pol Pot, Stalin. I can name a bunch actually, but just saying everything is like the Nazis or everybody's like Hitler, I don't think is helpful, and it's often conjures deep pain among our Jewish brothers and sisters for whom the Holocaust isn't that long ago, and still provokes feelings of pain and suffering and misery and trauma. And so I don't think we should go around using it indiscriminately or wantonly. I also don't think that it should be illegal to do it. If I want to say, hey, there are practices that the Israeli government is engaged in. Remember, it says Israeli policy. If I say this Israeli policy is similar to that of Nazi policy, that's illegal. I should get kicked out of school. I shouldn't get funding as an educational institution because I draw that comparison. I may not agree with the comparison. Again, I rarely think things are actually like Nazi Germany. That's a very rare thing. Nazi Germany was a unique kind of awful. But again, people have a right to make comparisons. And if you're saying that it is anti-Semitic, first of all, to equate a criticism of Israeli policy to a criticism of Jewish people is to conflate Zionism with Judaism. But to say that I can never compare an Israeli policy to a Nazi policy, or also I'm an anti-Semite, means then that Israel literally could create a policy tomorrow that is exactly like Nazi Germany, and we just can't say it. It's an unreasonable law or rule. And so if you can't say that Israel is racist in its founding, and you can't make contemporary comparisons or descriptions of Israel, it becomes a thing where you're being punished for criticizing Israel. It becomes a First Amendment issue. Anyway, enough with the IHRA. The point here is we don't need the IHRA definition in order to manage and respond to anti-Semitism, which is very real in this country. There are already laws on the book that prohibit anti-Semitic discrimination. Anti-Semitism needs to be addressed, but we don't want to make a definitional net. We don't want to kind of weave a definitional net that's so big and wide that everything is included. Because if everything is included, then you basically then nothing is really included, or everything is included, and therefore everybody's guilty at all times, and then we're just selectively deciding who we want to call an anti-Semite. I don't think that non-Jewish people should be just defining anti-Semitism for Jewish people any more than I think white people should be running around defining racism for Black people. But let's not pretend everybody shouldn't have a voice. If I said, something was racist and a white person didn't agree with me, I don't think because I'm Black, they have to just accept that they're racist. I do think we have to listen to each other. We have to listen to the pain and the hurt that people from these oppressed groups articulate. I think that's true. I think we absolutely have to take that seriously. We also have to have conversations. We also have to have intellectual engagement. And we have to assume that everybody's not going to land in the same place. All Black people don't see racism the same way. All Jewish people don't see the occupation or the state of Israel in the same way. We have to have those healthy conversations and dialogues, but we can't have them if Congress is passing bills that makes it illegal to even raise the question. That's deeply problematic. All right, y'all. I want to tell y'all a story that's going on in Georgia. The South be Southin' lately. Shout out to the South. My family's from the South. I love Georgia in particular. But Brian Kemp just did something wild. A new bill signed by Georgia Governor Brian Kemp limits some immigrants from obtaining land. I'm going to say that one more time. A new bill signed by Governor Georgia I can read y'all. A new bill signed by Georgia Governor Brian Kemp limits some immigrants from obtaining land. This is called Senate Bill 420, and it bans any, quote, agent of China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Russia who are not U.S. citizens or legal residents from owning commercial land or farmland in the state that is within 10 miles of a military installation. Governor Kemp said, "We cannot allow foreign adversaries to control something as critical to our survival as our food supply." So they're basically saying no foreigners, no immigrants can own anything too close to us because they're going to take away our food. They're going to harm us. I think this is a xenophobic law. I think this is a deeply dangerous law. I think it just conjures more hate and fear and hate of immigrants. It is just a terrible law. But again, it's a cynical one. Brian Kemp knows that by making a law like that, crazy lefties like me are going to disagree, and that earns him votes. People are like, well, if Marc Lamont Hill hates it, then we must find out what it's about and just like it just because he hates it. And that's not me being self-aggrandizing. It could be any lefty, any liberal TV commentator, any progressive activist, any radical voice. But the point is, they're making it so that immigrants can't buy land, not just because they don't want immigrants to have land, but because they know that the defenders of those immigrants will have to come out of the woodwork, and then they can be politically beaten up. They can be politically bloody because of this position. But I think it's interesting, and not to make everything about Palestine, but it's just fascinating that, these same Republicans will talk about how the Palestinians are so evil because, they won't allow Israelis to buy land, or they'll say they're so anti-Semitic, they said no Jews can buy land. But Brian Kemp is making an argument here, right? That he's preventing outsiders from buying land for strategic reasons, for economic reasons, but also for security reasons and political security reasons. And no one is batting an eye about it. They're saying it's fine. When Palestinians say, hey, we're going to prohibit land sales, it's not because they're Jewish. Again, it's because they're Israeli, and it's because there's an occupation here. It's just interesting when we decide that it's okay to block people from making certain choices that are afforded to them through the Constitution and through naturalization, or just through our global economic system. So Brian Kemp is doing this partly. My point is, Brian Kemp is doing this partly to respond to anti-immigrant sentiment, but he's also just making a long-term chess move so that he can be in the good graces of the people who hate the people I'm talking about. All right. Last story before we go. Benzino. Sorry, I had to get a swig of water, man. I'm tired. All right. Rapper and TV personality Benzino is under fire. Why? Not for his beef with his daughter, not because of some on-camera drama with Love and Hip Hop, which he's left a few years ago. Benzino is under fire for saying something I think even more curious and more egregious. Benzino says that R. Kelly deserves another chance. Listen to him.
Give R. Kelly a second chance?
Everybody deserves a second chance. I know that Elvis, a lot of them was 14, 15. I know Nick with young girls, to keep it 100, right? I'm not into that. Again, the legal age is 16 years old. So does that make it right if it does it? Yes or no? To everybody on the table.
Absolutely
does that make it right?
No.
If it's legal, does it make it right if a dates a 16-year-old?
Makes it very wrong. I
Ladies?
don't agree.
No, it's gross.
All right. So, but it's legal in America.
Right.
So why the is R. Kelly doing all this time? And because you know why? Because they're 14 and 2 years younger. But you don't think that the ones that you don't think that the people who cleared it for 16 years old didn't know that they're with 13 and 14s too. Right. Like, even to make a age that young to be the law, you already know they going under that.
Right.
I'm not condoning Nick with little girls. It's sick.
Right.
All right. It's sick. It's sick.
I agree.
But I don't think R. Kelly should rot in jail for 30 years either.
All right. That was Benzino on the We in Miami podcast. I swear to God, everybody, mom got a podcast. Now, to be clear, Benzino was referring to singer R. Kelly or Robert Kelly's incarceration for child sexual abuse charges, among other things. Now his daughter, Coi Leray, that's Benzino's daughter, who y'all might know from their little beef and from obviously her music career, let off a string of tweets to kind of distance herself from her father. Let's look at what she said. She said, "I want everybody to know I want nothing to do with anything my father has going on. I haven't spoken to him in over a year, and I don't condone or respect any of them interviews he got going on. I don't respect his decisions, and I really want nothing to do with him. Please don't even think of me when you see him." So she clearly was disgusted. They got some other family stuff going on. It's not my business. I'm not getting into no daddy-daughter stuff. But I did think Benzino's comment was interesting. Shout out to Benzino. I actually saw him. We bumped into each other in the airport maybe a week ago, Friday before last, almost 2 weeks ago. And I got to talk to him a little, just to say hello as he was passing. But this is a complicated thing. I know the easy thing to do is be like, Benzino's wrong. R. Kelly's a monster. He shouldn't get a second chance. I think the challenge of that is many of us identify as abolitionists. We're always talking about restorative justice. Everybody likes restorative justice till somebody does something to their kid. Everybody likes restorative justice till it's their world. It's just like the whole NIMBY thing, not in my backyard, that a lot of liberals are fans of. Oh, we need drug rehab. We need drug treatment. We need safe injection facilities. Okay, we're going to put one on your block. Oh, well, not in my neighborhood. Put it over there. Right? So there's a way that we all like things in the abstract, but in practice, we're a lot more traditional than we think. And I think that's what happens with this R. Kelly thing. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm an abolitionist and I want to dismantle this criminal legal system. I also want punishment, not accountability, but punishment for R. Kelly. That's how a lot of people feel, that they're wrestling with that tension. And I get it, because as an abolitionist myself, I do believe in restorative justice. I do believe in second chances and third chances and fourth chances. So I get what Benzino's talking about when he says, a lot of people did awful stuff. I don't want him to rot in jail for 30 plus years. I hear that. I do. I'm just not sure how to thread this needle. On the one hand, actually, I am sure how to thread this needle. R. Kelly has done some awful things, and not one or two awful things. He has a long history, a long track record of doing awful things to young Black girls. And he ain't the only one. A lot of rappers out there, a lot of jazz singers out there, a lot of gospel singers out there have similar track records. We just tend to focus on the R. Kellys and the rappers of the world. So I think he needs to be held accountable for the harm he's caused. And I think that we need to begin a restorative approach. Do I think R. Kelly should spend the rest of his life in prison? No. I don't think anybody should. It's not particular R. Kelly. I'm not sympathetic to R. Kelly. I just don't believe that prison should be used in that way. What R. Kelly needs is help. R. Kelly needs mental health support. He needs a lot of things. He needs to learn how to read. He needs all the things, right? I'm not being funny. So I want an amalgam of supports for R. Kelly, just like I want for everybody else. But R. Kelly, particularly as a rich person and a famous person, has the capacity to do harm in our community, even in abolition theory, even in abolitionism. If you think about what Quakers were talking about, in the 70s, there was still this idea of restraint of the few. There are some people who pose such an immediate threat to our community that they need to be removed from community not for a prison sentence, but for some kind of period of time, so that we can heal them, make them whole again, make their victims whole again, and then slowly transition them back into society. That's the goal. When it comes to R. Kelly, people are like, oh no, throw away the key. We went from one extreme to the other. We went from like stepping in the name of love and buying Chocolate Factory album, even though he was on video, then doing harm to a little girl or to a young woman. And now everybody's like, throw him away. And I'm saying, let's be critical of R. Kelly. Let's hold R. Kelly accountable in a range of ways. And if he ever is made whole and can return to society, I think he should, just like everybody should. So I say all that to say, you know, Benzino seemed like he was saying something crazy. You know, R. Kelly deserves a second chance. No, I think you're right. I think people deserve second and third and fifth chances. But accountability only comes with contrition. It's not like R. Kelly's like, yo, I got a problem. I can't leave these girls alone. Somebody help me. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. That's different. R. Kelly kind of is like, I didn't do it. Remember him with Gayle King? I'm fighting for my life. And Gail's like, it's like, if he's, R. Kelly has never expressed regret or contrition for what he's done. And so it's hard to even imagine starting a restorative process for him. Because again, accountability requires contrition. It requires honesty. It requires vulnerability. R. Kelly ain't done none of that. He wants to still frame himself as the victim of some vicious lie and ugly conspiracy. And it's like, nah, bro, you're a harmful dude. So you got to own up to it. But no, I think so. Yeah. So Benzino is right in the abstract that everybody deserves a second chance, right? But based on the criteria, I don't think R. Kelly meets it. And I'm like, of all the people we could be talking about, y'all, let's think about some other folks. This isn't to Benzino, it's just us in general. Like, yo, let's start to think about other people whose cases we could fight for. There's some political prisoners still locked up. Let's try and get them free. Anyway, y'all, we're going to run, but I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight in Night School. I want to shout out a couple people here. Alex, 1914, is a new member and probably a Sigma, but we'll allow it anyway. Cecilia Charles, always good to see you. Thank you so much for your generosity. Mo Reese got a 1 month membership. Check this out. Fate, look at God. Gifted 20 channel memberships. So 20 y'all gonna get a free membership for a month. I hope y'all enjoy it. Make the most of it. Sustenance Bloom, thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you so much for your supportive words. And Bullet the Bunny, Global Intifada, and F Izzy put a nickel in the swear jar for you. I got you, Bunny. Everybody, I want to thank you all for watching. It's the first day of the month, so we're back up and at it. We had a very strong month of views in April. The channel is growing, but I want to grow the channel every single week, every single day. I'm just excited to have this community with you, and so every single day we grow the channel. Every single day. We do that by putting out videos, but we also do that by asking people to hit the like button. You can grow our channel just by hitting the like button. When YouTube sees that so many of y'all like the content, it expands the reach of the algorithm. Hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers I have, the more support and resources I'm able to get from YouTube itself, much less the broader world. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit that join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. I don't care if it's a bronze membership or a diamond membership, although I prefer the diamond, of course. It's just nice to know that people are riding with me and that they're part of this content creation team, because we're doing this together. We are learning together. We're building and growing together. So I just want y'all to know that y'all loved and appreciate it. And of course, you can hit us directly. If you don't want to go through all that other rigmarole, just go straight to Cash App and just drop something in the coffers for MLHTV. Again, $ MLHTV, and then Venmo MLHTV as well. Right now, based on who's online right now, it's day 1 of May. We want to grow into May having our biggest month ever. We want to have the most resources ever. We want to put out great content. And so all of you out there watching, if you just could donate for this month, $10. If everybody here watching right now donated $10, we would meet our fundraising goals for the month. If just the people watching right now, if all of you were to donate $10, of course, some of you will donate more, some of you won't donate anything, but if everybody gave $10, we'd be able to put something toward our new, let me just say our new space. We'd be able to hire more producers, more editors. We'd be able to really make this operation run even more smoothly and more grand fashion. And that's what we want. We want to put out the best product for you all. So if you can, again, Cash App, Venmo, join the channel, subscribe to the channel. All of it helps. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.